Okay guys, welcome back to another episode of Rotten Reviews. On this episode I take a look at the 1992 film Sleepwalkers, Stephen King's Sleepwalkers. It has a 25% on the tomato meter and a 31% on the audience score. This is definitely rotten, but I'm going to say right off the bat that this is one of those films that it's so bad that it's good. This will have you laughing out loud. I recommend cracking open a beer and starting in on this after the first beer is almost finished. You will laugh out loud at how dumb this really is and how sad that, something from Stephen King, once again, not only is it a bad movie, but it is a laugh out loud funny movie. So my hat's off to whoever decided to make Stephen King into a comedy writer, but this is just as pure comedy gold. This 1992 film was supposed to be taken seriously. I remember when it came out, I saw this on, thankfully I saw it on home video release, VHS rental. I didn't rent it. A friend of mine rented it, and we watched it together while we drank beers. And I remember laughing at it, particularly at the ending of how the big bad was finally killed in this movie. It is laugh out loud funny. The whole thing would be considered that way today. It ages very well as a laugh out loud funny movie. Back in the day, it was just funny in some parts. You know, they wanted you to take this serious. The trailer and the marketing wanted you to take this 100% serious. But over time, this has become more of a comedy gold type of thing. This could easily become a cult classic. In fact, I think it's worthy. It deserves to be a cult classic at some point in time. Highly recommend, but, watch this for the comedy. Don't take it serious. This is... probably going to be mentioned in the audience reviews, and let's jump right into those audience reviews. We have some relevant ones from September of 2019, just a couple of months ago. First review, half a star. I had this, watched it once, and would never watch it again. Too cheesy and so boring you will be disappointed. Not scary and a very slow film. Some parts are so boring instead of being scary. Avoid at all costs. If you want the best horror, then watch Nightmare on Elm Street, which was released around the same time. It has better gory scenes and acting, and it is terrifying in comparison. First of all, they gave this half a star. Yeah, I'll say 1 star. This could be 1 star. I would say half a star because the movie was made and people got paid. The economy goes around, so it were. And then I'll give it an extra half a star, bringing it up to 1 star just for the laugh out loud funniness of it. I think if this was, if you're watching this while you're drunk, this easily goes up to 2 stars for the comedy factor. But again, sober, yeah, 1 star peak, even at its funniest. I'll say that, I don't think it was boring. I think it was boring at the time when you were taking this serious in 1992. Right now, the boring parts are also quite funny. In particular, at the time in 92, I considered the plot in which the high school teacher chases down one of his students and pulls him over on the side of the road. And he actually tries to make a move, like a gay type of move on the high school kid, and he loses his hand in the process, literally loses his hand, which is handed back to him by the villain of the story. That was like, it came across to me as boring and strange when I watched it in 92. Now it just makes me laugh out loud, and it's not boring at all. It's comedy gold. The plot of this is basically that there are 2 people, it's portrayed as a mother and a son. They are the villains. They're the bad guys in the story. They move into the small town, and they are some kind of demonic creature, chameleon-like in disguise in human form, shapeshifters, as it were. It's not clear if they're demons or some kind of alien creature or some quasi, Stephen King does this type of thing where, it could be an alien or it could be a demon. It's really not relevant. It's just that they're the bad guys, right? they're shown to you as mother and son, and then very early on it's shown that they're actually romantic with each other and they sleep with each other, and it shows you this. And the mom is played by Alice Krieg, and the son is played by an actor who is completely forgettable to me, and I'm not going to look his name up. He's not a big Hollywood star. He's came and went in the 90s, so to speak. Alice Krieg is more well known. She plays villains. She played the Borg Queen on Star Trek, certainly in Star Trek First Contact, and she played again in Star Trek Voyager as the Borg Queen. She's been in other things like Reign of Fire, for example. She had a small role. Now, she plays a villain great, but in this movie, it's laugh out loud funny. She's like the demon queen, so to speak, and her son is like coming of age, and he needs to feast on the energy, the life force of virginal females. It's kind of like a vampire thing in a way. It's very cheesy. The special effects are very cheesy, and there's a lot of sexual innuendo, not just hetero, but also homosexual stuff that, went over my head at the time in 92, but it's in there. Let's continue on. 3 stars. The first half of Sleepwalkers has a rather spooky, atmospheric vibe to it, with decent acting and the knowledge of not taking itself too seriously, but after that the second half becomes more absurd. To quote the nostalgia critic, "Oh King, I like your work when it's good, but I frickin' love it when it's bad." Yeah, it's laugh out loud funny, it's so bad. It's got everything a bad movie can have, just about. For example, it's got, the old trope of being able to fire a single bullet at, cop cars or cars and making them explode with one hit. It's got that thing going on. It's got a scene in which, cats, a multitude of cats attack the bad guy, and when he's in his demon form, and after they scratch him enough, he just kind of bursts into flames, and you can see his body burning as it just collapses after all these cats attack him. It's laugh out loud funny. Again, these demon creatures in the show, they are like the enemies of cats. Cats like to hang around outside their house and menace them. They want to attack them. It's not explained why this is, why cats hate them so bad, but this movie is not for cat lovers at all. It's got some cringy comedy cat killing in it, a lot of brutal cat killings. The bad guys, Alice Krieg and her son, they kill cats in the most disgusting, gory, and, over-the-top comedy type of ways. They kill cats, and cats attack them and attempt to kill them at every opportunity. There's also a sheriff or a cop in this small town who drives around in his cop car with a cat named Clovis on his passenger seat, and he talks to Clovis and sings crazy, like almost drunken, expletive-filled nonsensical songs he sings while he's driving along with Clovis. It is very bizarre. I can't even imagine it was that bizarre in the Stephen King book or short story that this is based on. Again, I don't know which it is, a short story or a book. Either way, this movie is comedy gold, and this viewer is taking it the same way. I friggin' love it when it's bad, and you're really gonna love this one. Crack open a couple of beers and you're gonna laugh your ass off. Continuing, 5 stars. Sleepwalkers is a fantastic, hilarious piece of horror as long as you do not go into it expecting a true horror. It is more of a comedy than an actual horror. This movie is just crazy, a fantastical and horrifying journey filled with blood and gore, monsters, a crazy storyline, and over-the-top monster characters with all the grotesque comedy and cameo appearances anyone could ask for. Standing somewhere in between horror and comedy, this film is bad, but in the best way possible. Yeah, it's got a lot of cameo appearances by other directors, like horror directors specifically. It's got a cameo appearance by Mark Hamill as a cop. He shows up one time and never shows up again. It's really bizarre. A lot of people in Hollywood wanted to be in this for some reason, and I don't know if they expected it to be a comedy or a parody, but that's what it comes across as. And all these directors, these horror directors like Wes Craven, for example, that show up in this and play small roles, they play it like they're expecting this to be a serious movie, and yet it's not. When you recognize these people, you're thinking, I wonder if they realized how ridiculous this thing was going to turn out to be. Now, again, I saw this on home video, and I didn't appreciate all the cameos at the time in '92. I was in my early 20s and didn't know that much about the directors of movies. Now I recognize these people, and it makes this just funnier to watch after a couple of beers. But I recognized, of course, Mark Hamill right off the bat as this kind of old cop, and he doesn't do anything that's funny, but he is kind of weird. And then again, I'll mention another thing. There's a scene in which I believe Mark Hamill is in this scene. A skeleton jumps out of a closet, kind of like, you know how a skeleton might fall out of a closet if it's propped up in there? Well, this skeleton actually jumps out of a closet and screams while it falls to the ground, and it's straight up comedy gold. And I believe Mark Hamill is in that scene during that. Um, there are other things like the way the villain, this son of the story, he can kill cats, but he like sometimes he kills them by just grabbing them, snapping their neck, and throwing their lifeless bodies, bouncing them off the wall. And obviously they're not real cats, they're prop cats, but it's just at the time it was supposed to be serious and scary and horrifying, and it just comes across now as just being totally funny, where you laugh out loud at these fake cat bodies flopping off of walls and whatnot. It's completely ridiculous. Uh, yeah, let's move on. 5 stars. This is not scary. This is funny. Yes, I'll agree. And if you take this as a comedy, maybe it is 5 stars when you're totally wasted. I'll say again 2 stars for the comedy value. But who knows? Get drunk. Maybe the stars go up. 3 stars. Like Hitchcock's The Birds, the story here is set, at least in part, at the start in Bodega Bay, and involves an overprotective mother and a subsequently unresolved Oedipus complex that threatens the potential for placid domesticity. But whereas in the horror classic, according to Zizek, the titular avians loom like the monstrous maternal superego. Okay, in this campy knockoff, the symbolic situation is reversed as cats surround the incestuous monsters in order to restore peace and punish those. Okay, this is a lot of crazy words. I don't know if this person's being a parody of himself in this review. But yeah, the cats are the good guys. They've come to town to surround the bad guys in their house, the mom and the son, and they're waiting for them to come out so they can all attack. It's not explained why or how. It's just you have to go with this. Yeah, there's the incest thing between the mom and son. I don't know why that's necessary. Again, it shows them in human form kind of doing their thing romantically on a bed. It also shows them in a mirror what it looks like, you know, as 2 alien demons crawling all over each other. I don't know what the point of that is. It's not funny. It's just kind of weird, so I'll move on. 2 stars. A movie that is so ridiculous that I end up laughing at it. Yeah, it is so ridiculous. It's gory. The type of gore is ridiculous. The cat killing is ridiculous. You end up laughing. At one point, Alice Krieg's character, one shot, blows up a whole bunch of cop cars, one after the other with a pistol. Yeah, 2.5 stars. This movie is so horrible, it's just entertaining. That's honestly I can say about it, yeah. 2.5 stars. One of those horror movies that was bad to begin with, and it only got worse with time. However, as an ironic comedy, it's freaking gold. Yeah, I agree 100%. 5 stars, an amazing descent into madness. 1.5 stars, absolutely dire with the odd redeeming moment. I can't believe Stephen King wrote this rubbish and even appeared in it. Stupid and predictable, and a Twin Peaks ripoff which immediately preceded it. Barely any fun and a waste of an hour and a half. Well, you see, you're just not appreciating it for the comedy gold that it is. Stephen King appears in all his movies. He has a little cameo in all of his movies. That's his thing. He's been doing it since the first one of his movies in the 80s, and he's continued all the way up into the present time. He always does a little cameo in all of the adaptations based upon his stories, whether they are movies or TV shows, so expect to see him. That's here, not here or there. It doesn't add or take anything away from it, but you know, he's not afraid to star, you know, he's not afraid to show his face in things that he must know are laughably bad in a lot of ways. So in any case, you know, I'll also mention a part that's ridiculous. It stands out for me above everything else in this movie. What stands out is, you know, the main character, the son of the family, the demon, whatever his name is, he's a high school student. He, he's driving around in a late 70s, early 80s Camaro or Pontiac Firebird, one of the two. And when the cops chase him or appear to be chasing him to bother him for some purpose, speeding or whatnot, he is able to just park on the side of the road and concentrate his mind, and he can like make himself invisible, including the car, and he can also transform the car into a Mustang, an old classic Mustang, which stays an old classic Mustang for the rest of the film. It's completely nonsensical and unexplained how he does this, not only achieving the invisibility, but also transforming his car into different types of cars. Give this a little bit of thought and you see how ridiculous and crazy it is. And if he has all these powers, why does he need to pose as a high school student? Creatures with these kind of powers, just with simple logic, wouldn't need to do all this stuff in a small town in the way they do it. Again, it's just complete nonsense that's hand waved away. Just take this as a straight up comedy and go with the flow. 1 star, not to follow in the tracks of the nostalgic critic because I saw the film before watching this review, but this film is hilarious and classic Stephen King. Yeah, I'll agree. Take this as a comedy. 3 stars. Taking out the dull moments, this is kind of a guilty pleasure Stephen King movie. Yeah, it could be a guilty pleasure, but I don't think this is available on streaming any longer. I'm not sure. I guess you'd have to pay for this or find it out there somewhere. I haven't seen it pop out anywhere, but yeah, it's worth it to get hammered and watch this as a comedy. 3.5 stars. Stephen King's Sleepwalkers is supposed to be a serious horror film, but when you have death by corncob stabbings and feline vampire hunters, you know it's going to be just bad. It's going to be so bad it's good. Sadly, there are some good serious moments and a handful of well-acted scenes, which sometimes work against it, but there's more than enough head-slapping and jaw-dropping dumb moments to make it fun again. Don't take it too serious and you'll have a blast. Well, thank you for reminding me about, yes, there are people that are stabbed to death with corn cobs. That's how they're killed. And yeah, there's a scene in which a teacher, he pulls, I don't know how a teacher somehow pulls over a student on the road like he's a cop, but he does. He pulls over this kid in his car and he tries to put some gay moves on him, and the kid basically rips his hand off and then hands him back his hand, and it's like a rubber hand with blood on the end of it, and that's the end of that. It's just so funny. You have to see it to believe it. 4 stars. I'm not exactly sure how to grade this movie. It's insane, but so damn entertaining that it's hard to properly give it a bad grade. There really isn't a moment in this movie that doesn't feel like a hilarious stage of absurdity that will probably make anyone laugh if they are in the right mood. I guess the narrative structure and performances are tight enough to not say that this movie is an awful disaster. It's just a self-aware, insane horror movie, possibly horror comedy, that's almost impossible to not be entertained by. Yeah, but see, the funny part is, in 1992, this was not supposed to be a comedy in any way. This was a flat-out, straight-up Stephen King marketed horror movie. It was not expected for it to be funny. It wasn't like supposed to be a parody, and that's what makes this even funnier, is that over time it has become even funnier than it was in 92. In 92, we just considered it bad and forgettable. Now it's just straight-up comedy gold. It's like a wine that it didn't taste good at the time, and instead of becoming sour after it sat in the basement, you uncork it, and it tastes like such sweet, delicious, like the best type of wine you've ever had. But it wasn't intended to be that way. It was just cheap, very cheap wine originally that just got forgotten in the basement. Somehow it didn't turn into vinegar. It turned into comedy gold. That's how I can describe this, because this wasn't even that funny in 92. I just remember this being like completely forgettable, and we just moved on to the next rental. Now it's just comedy gold. Time has indeed improved this movie. 4.5 stars. Excellent vampire movie. It shows vampires who feed on life force. Wish they would have gone deeper into the history of the society. Perhaps future film may do that. I enjoyed it. They're reading way too much into this. It's not supposed to be vampires. Yes, they kind of suck the life force out of virginal girls. That's about the only thing that's vampiric about this. Not a vampire movie. Half a star. Stephen King movies are usually hit or miss, and this is basically a blind person trying to shoot a basketball. It's a huge miss indeed. The acting is awful, the plot is awful, and this movie is altogether unpleasant. Spoiler alert, in the beginning of the movie we see a bunch of cats being hanged, not to mention Alice Krieg's character breaks a cat's neck and killing it. WTF, at that moment I wanted to quit this movie. It's unpleasant seeing something like that happen to animals. Well, you have to take this as comedy. It's complete comedy. Yes, if you had taken that completely serious, the cat killings, I don't know how you could, but if you did take it seriously, you're not going to be able to watch this. If you take this as a comedy, you're just going to laugh out loud because these are obviously fake cats. It looks like they're fake cats. It looked like they were fake cats in 1992. We didn't think they were real cats. So yes, you're just going to see straight up cat killing humor, but take it as humor, please. It's not serious. Half a star. This is just a ridiculous story providing no motivation to care about it or suspend disbelief at all. It's built around third grade style anything goes type concepts, such as the villain's car being apparently able to magically morph into any make or model or color without any motivation to put it into context as to why this makes sense in the story's universe. Real rubbish, many unexplained loose ends, story is deeply flawed, so movie is terrible. Yeah, but again, it's comedy gold. That's what I would have said in 1992 if I were writing a review. But when you see this now, looking back, it's pure comedy gold. They weren't intending it to be, but it really is now. 2.5 stars. This is desperately stupid and horribly written. Mr. King, what the hell was going on with you here? Well, we do know the stories about booze and cocaine, but let's continue. But at the same time, it's fun. Silly, good fun. Alice Krieg delivers an excellent performance, and Madchen Amick makes a refreshing and exuberant lead, whoever that is. Too bad the whole thing has these tonal shifts that really doesn't fit the material, and the central myth is convoluted yet inexistent, though through its whole spotty narration, which is a very dumb mistake to make. Again, you're taking this way too serious. This is just comedy gold. Half a star. Wow, just wow. This movie, some people would consider it a so bad it's good, but I personally don't. What can I say that's most likely no one else has said about how terrible this film is? Well, the only thing is that this movie makes Fantastic Four look like the Shawshank Redemption. Honestly, if I could, I would give this movie a 0. If I could, it's so bad. If you want to keep yourself somewhat normal, don't even look at this movie, just don't. Well, the humor wasn't for you then. This is just straight up comedy gold. 1 star, a really horrible film that is just laughable. Incestuous werecats with superpowers. Really, absolutely stupid movie that you could probably laugh at more than enjoy. Pure trash. Well, yes, I almost laughed out loud reading that line. I mean, think about this for a second. Incestuous werecats with superpowers. Yeah, and this is from the mind of Stephen King, the very much at the time alcohol-filled and cocaine-filled mind of Stephen King. And I'm not just saying that. He's talked about this at length, not in regards to this, but yes, this is his mind at the moment this was written. To be fair, I haven't actually read the source material, but if it's anything like this, then yes, it's his drug-fueled writing days. Half a star. We're in December of 2017. Awful script, awful acting, yes. Also a lot of cameos. I mean, think about this for a minute. Why would all these classic, famous horror movie directors want to appear in this and make cameos in this? This wasn't a big budget movie. It didn't have big name stars. So maybe they wanted this to be a comedy and they didn't tell the marketing people, because this wasn't marketed as a comedy. This was marketed as straight up horror. It was supposed to be taken seriously. All these horror directors make these cameos in this. So I don't know what they were thinking. Maybe there should be there should be some documentary on what they were thinking. It just makes me wonder, you know. 2.5 stars were in November of 2016. Awful direction and acting, but at least watching the handsome leads and the presence of cats in abundance make it an enjoyable time waster. And of course, Enya's soundtrack adds to the pleasure. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize Enya did the soundtrack, but again, the soundtrack was largely forgettable to me. It's the least of this movie's problems. Lots of cats, yeah. Lots of real and fake cats. The house that the main characters, the mother and son, live in the small town, it is surrounded by dozens of cats that just hang out there. It's kind of funny that in the movie, in the plot, they're supposed to be there to defeat the I don't know, werecats or whatever they are, but they don't actually actively try to attack the house or get in. They just hang out around the outside perimeter, kind of surround the yard and the streets around the house. That's kind of a little bit nonsensical because the movie actually makes it look like the cats are actually attracted to be around them as though they enjoy their company, but at the same time the cats actually defeat them at the end. It's very weird and another reason to laugh out loud at the plot and the script writing. 1 star. I'd call this the all-time worst adaptation of a Stephen King story, except unlike Maximum Overdrive, King skipped publishing the story and committed it straight to film instead, with Mick Garris at the helm and a talented cast of actors to work with, including two exceptionally talented and gorgeous actresses, Alice Krige and Madchen Amick. I'll disagree in that I don't think Alice Krige was beautiful by most people's standards. She's not a sex symbol. She never was. She played the Borg Queen, for example. That's not exactly high sex appeal. Maybe her voice, okay, but no, I disagree. And whoever Madchen Amick is, I'm sorry, but that's not a famous person by any standard. Sorry, I'm just not going to say that it is. I'm not going to look up who it is. I don't recognize the name, so I'm going to say they're largely irrelevant. Continuing, but somehow the end product would make you believe that nobody involved in the film had a shred of talent or that Stephen King was as bad an author as his detractors say he is. I don't know. You know, I don't know if this movie came out before anything was published. I don't think so. I think this was at least a short story of his. I know I've seen this in written form, so I don't agree with that. 1 star I'll agree with, though. 2 stars. The second half of the movie has some creepy and intriguing moments, but the first half drags a lot, so it doesn't really matter when you actually get to the good part. I'm not sure what you could consider the good part. You know, at the beginning of this, you see ridiculous stuff like skeletons screaming, for example. So I'm not sure where you would consider the first half and the second half and where it drags and where it's good. The whole thing is just laugh out loud funny if you've already finished a beer before you started, and that's what I recommend. 2 stars. The members of a small Indiana town are oblivious to the threat of their latest residents, Mary and Charles Brady. Although they appear to be normal human beings, the mother and son are actually members of a dying breed of sleepwalkers, cat-like creatures that survive by feeding on virgins. As Charles sets out to stalk their latest meal, his prey, young Tanya Robertson, must struggle to fight off the sinister creatures. Well, that's a very nice and sweet plot synopsis that might have been put out on the box cover of the VHS in 1992. It's irrelevant. It doesn't tell me why you thought it was 2 stars. It was laugh out loud funny, and I think it's worth 2 for that. Half a star. 12/29/2015. Wow, that was a horrible film. Yeah, I could imagine some millennial, some very young person that watches this that just straight up thought this would be a horror film. Maybe they watched the latest It adaptation in the theaters, which was considered by many, certainly by millennials, to be scary. Not by me, but that's another story. They might go into this, you know, watching this somehow thinking that this would give them the same type of experience that it did. Yeah, I could see how they would be shocked at how bad this is because this is not, this is almost like it was coming from a different writer. You wouldn't think that the same person that wrote It or did any of the adaptations of it, the TV show or the movie, is the same writer that did this or that was involved in this film. It's like night and day. It's like you wouldn't even associate them together. It would be quite shocking if you didn't know better. 2.5 stars, goofy, weird, and wacky, fun but unsubstantial. Yeah, but see, it wasn't meant to be fun. When this came out in 92, fun was not how this was marketed, and yet it became fun over the years. It aged into something that's fun to watch. 4 stars, a horror with elements of comedy, then a full scare horror. I first saw this when I was a young child and just looked at it again. The bizarre nature of the subject matter never completely lost its flavor since I first saw it. The story and the way it is presented is twisted and well done. Somehow, if King had not penned it, I really don't think it would have worked as well. Clovis may not have been the star, but he was definitely the main hero. Now, Clovis was the cat that was like sitting in the sheriff's patrol car. It's completely ridiculous. Clovis is just there to be the sheriff's or the cops, the town cop's sidekick, because of course it has to be a cat, because of course those are the nemesis of the evil guys. It's just completely stupid and laugh out loud. 3 stars, so bad, but it's still so entertaining. There's some campy, hilarious bits in it, some great music in it, and fun cameos. Yeah, but not quite 3 stars, unless you're really drunk. 3 stars again. Saw this when it first came out. It's cheesy but fun and has a good sense of humor. Lots of cameos from horror directors, writers, as well as such as King, Barker, Dante, Hooper, and Landis. Worth a watch for fans of the genre. Again, yeah, if you're old enough to remember the works of those people, then yeah, there's a lot of cameos there. 1 star, November of 2014. Warning, if you're a cat lover, do not watch this film. However, if you're a fan of Alice Krige, you might just like it. It also has a fairly funny cameo by Stephen King. It's interesting to see how makeup and creature effects have improved since 1992. Yeah, it is pretty funny. The big bad demon character at the end, you can tell when all the cats scratch him to death and he bursts into flames that it's just like a wax or plastic figure standing there on fire. It's like something a 13-year-old on YouTube could pull off better. And that's the way it looked at the time, too. Actually, in 92, it looked that weird and bad, too, when I saw it as a 22-year-old. So I wouldn't say it's representative of the effects of the time. It's representative of bad effects at the time, because other movies do not look that bad, and they didn't look that bad at the time. This was not considered a good movie of any regard. This was completely forgettable in 92. It was considered a dud. It hadn't yet aged into, considering it to be funny yet, but now it is. 3 stars. Moments of Stephen King brilliance stand out from the rather cheap, tawdry high school production values inherent throughout this, set in a California-looking Indiana. Yeah, they're right. If somebody didn't mention this was Indiana, when I first saw this, I thought this was somewhere in Southern California too, because yeah, it's filmed in Southern California, and it looks like it is. It does not look like Indiana, but let's move on. I have traveled throughout southern hilly Indiana and flat central northern parts of the state. The premise that this is in Indiana ruins another only from Stephen King inspiration. Sorry. Yeah, I'll agree again. It's obvious, like, if you didn't tell me where this was, I would assume it's in Southern California, because that's where it looks like it was filmed. 5 stars. Why, bad guys? This is one of my favorite movies. Let me say the truth, I enjoyed it more than Star Wars 5. It has good effects, good acting, mystery, everything. It's a very good flick to watch. I loved every minute of it. I don't believe you. I think you're being funny. Nice try. 2 stars. Not the best Stephen King movie out there. It lacks a certain depth and flow that undercuts any suspense or horror. That's an understatement. This is flat out comedy gold. 1 star. As a horror film, this borders on 0 stars. As an unintentional comedy, it at very least gets a silver award for nonsensical plotting, terrible special effects. The Sleepwalkers look more like hippos than cats, and laughable action scenes. Yeah, when the Sleepwalkers are in their real form, they do look like humans with hippopotamus-type heads more than cat heads. It is, or like a hippopotamus with whiskers. It's really bad, people. It's worth watching. 2 stars. Incestuous monsters are very scary when they have sex with each other. It's very weird. 2 stars, fun to view, but nothing new. 1.5 stars, a horror story that's muddled and oddly schizophrenic when it comes to the relationships of the characters, especially the villains. The atmosphere is wasted. 2.5 stars, not a bad little feline horror flick, only it's a comedy horror flick. 1 star, hilariously terrible Stephen King film from an original screenplay by King is bursting with awfulness, bad visual effects, actors in rubber monster suits, clumsy stunt work, cheesy looking gore, and a death by corncob scene. I agree 100%, and the 1 star going to 2 stars just for the laugh out loud value that this possesses now. Again, this is like a cheap wine that was put in a cellar, and you take it out of the cellar now, and all of a sudden, somehow by the magic of the cellar, this is like, it tastes like right up there with the gold medal wine award winners. I don't know how, but it just does. It wasn't like this in '92. It was just bad and forgettable. Now it's just flat out hysterically funny. I highly recommend watching this, but make sure you're in the mood for a comedy and that you drink. The audience score 31%. I would say is a comedy. This could go to 70% plus. It's not rotten, but taking this for what it's marketed to be, it should be like a 15%. It's really rotten. So anyway, I will see you on the next episode of Rotten Reviews.